cop who put his badge on the line for justice.
You know the name Doug Poppa?
Yes, I do. God bless Doug Poppa, an honest cop.
I was elated, of course, but then as he testified, I was somewhat concerned for him, because I knew that they were probably going to crucify that man.
Sometimes the truth has a price. That may be the lesson of a Virginia police officer who says, in trying to do the right thing, he ended up paying for it.
The message you're sending is, see, we did it, Doug. You don't come out, you don't buck the system. No matter what the reason is, you just can basically keep your mouth shut. But if I wouldn't do it all over again, I would take the badge and I would leave it on somebody's desk and get out of place for it. Because the day I can tell the truth because somebody's pressuring me, and the day the system doesn't want me to tell the truth because somebody's pressuring me, is the day I'd leave the badge on the desk and walk away.
Poppa was fired for insubordination. But one man who confronted truth and consequences.
From Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Doug Poppa, Truth and Consequences Podcast. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Truth and Consequences Podcast from Las Vegas, Nevada. This is episode 114 for Sunday, May 1st, 2022. I'm your host, Doug Poppa. For those of you who don't know, I'm an independent investigative journalist, a former law enforcement officer, and former casino executive. This episode is a follow-up to episodes 110, 111, and 112. If you're not familiar with those episodes, I suggest after you view this, go back and look at them, because I'm not going to rehash the stuff in hours worth of podcast. This is on new information that I got coming up here today. April 17th, I published episode 110, and that was titled, Sattler Says Resorts World President Scott Sibella Lied to Gaming Control Board. I followed that up. That was an exclusive story. I was the first one to publish that story. On April 22nd, I followed it up with episode 111, and that episode was titled, Who's Lying? Resorts World President Scott Sibella or Gambler Brandon Sattler? I followed that up on April 25th with episode 112, which was titled, Resorts World's Sibella Knew Felon Brandon Sattler Under FBI Investigation, Sources Say. Today's episode, follow-up to those three with new information, and the title for today's episode, sometimes I change these titles after I do the podcast, so I think this one's going to pretty much stay. So today's title is Resorts World's Sibella to Gambler Cipriani. Quote, You have no influence. I'm bigger than you. Unquote. That's the title for today. Get some stuff on the screen so you get familiar with who we're talking about over here. That is Scott Sibella, the president and CEO of Resorts World Las Vegas. In this episode, we're going to focus on Scott Sibella and this gentleman, which I talked about him in the other episodes. That's Robert J. Cipriani, also goes by the name R.J. Cipriani. So, gives you an idea who we're talking about. Their photographs over here. Back in episode 110, I played an excerpt of a video from the Nevada Gaming Control Board that was from March 2nd of this year, 2022. And that was the day that Resorts World President and CEO Scott Sibella gave testimony in front of the Gaming Control Board, which was the basis for my first podcast I did on this subject, on Sibella, Resorts World, and these gamblers. I'm going to play a excerpt, a small one, that's pertinent to this podcast. If you want to look at the full one that I published, go back and look at episode 110. Scott Sibella's testimony, that the person he's referring to when he talks, they don't mention the name, but that is Robert J. Cipriani, who I just had the picture up, R.J. Cipriani. He's a high-profile, called high-end, high-roller gambler, international gambler. He's played all over the world. Now, I'm going to put this up on the screen here to get some context so you can see this here, give you some background. I'm not going to go into the whole background of Mr. Cipriani. There's plenty of articles that were published by other outlets on Mr. Cipriani, but just so you get some background for this, that is an article from the Nevada Current that will have the link in the description section of this. And in essence, on November 19th of 2021, Robert Cipriani was he was arrested in Resorts World because he took the phone from the gentleman you see in that photograph on the electric scooter, Robert Alexander, who Cipriani claimed was stalking him for a couple of days and taking his picture. So he grabbed the phone from him and he tried to turn it into the cage, and then he tried to turn in security. Well, he ended up getting arrested for the theft of the phone. Later on, they charge him with robbery, I guess because it was like when you grab out a person's hand, it's force. But I just want to know, Robert Alexander, the guy you see on that screen in that scooter, is a convicted federal felon for fraud. Now, let me get back up on the screen over here. You go back and review that. So, as you remember from one of the other podcasts, I said that Las Vegas attorney David Chesnoff was associated before Mr. Alexander was arrested because he had invested in his company. And if you go online, you see a lot of stories about Robert Alexander and the fraud and Kazang, the company, and the video games and all the stuff. Mr. Cipriani is alleging that a lot of the stuff that happened inside Resorts World at night, and he's claiming it's like it's retaliation because he brought to the attention of Resorts World that Robert Alexander was a convicted federal felon, and he was sentenced. He just hasn't been sentenced. He hasn't gone to prison yet. Was gambling in the casino. And Alexander was charged with fraud and maybe some other stuff. And then, of course, he says that he brought to the attention of Resorts World executives and management about Brandon Sattler. You go back and look at the other podcasts. Brandon Sattler is another gambler who was gambling at Resorts World, and he is also a convicted federal felon for bank fraud and other fraud charges out of the state of California. And then there's another gentleman that I haven't spoken too much about. I don't think I mentioned his name, but I may do something on an upcoming podcast. And that's, I think his first name is Edward, last name is Ting. He is also a convicted federal felon for fraud, and I believe some other charges, maybe money laundering, I'm not too certain. He also was gambling at Resorts World, and from what we heard in these different news articles, Mrs. Cipriani was bringing that to the attention of the executives and the management at Resorts World, that all these convicted federal felons for fraud and other charges were gambling in the casino. So that gives you some background. So that's all I'm going to get into with that part of it. I'm going to play this video of the Gaming Control Board. It's March 2nd, 2022, like I said. And just go ahead and listen to what's going on. I'm going to take myself off the screen so you can see it full screen.
What I would say is, I'll be careful what I say, but there's, when you decide to throw somebody out of the casino, which isn't me, they want to attack somebody. So this person was at MGM, hanging out in the mansions area with our high-end customers, causing problems, and as a whole, really corporate decided to 86 that person. And that person continues to try to attack me from there. And then when I got here, he was in the casino without me knowing, created some problems. It's under the DA now. But now he's trying to attack and create things that aren't even true. And he's if you Google him, there's a track record 3,000 pages deep of just what kind of person this is. I mean, we're not going to do anything that doesn't fall under our compliance. We have a compliance committee. We think we hired the best people. If somebody comes in our casino that's not supposed to be there, of course, we're going to not allow them to come there. But we'd be foolish to invite people that aren't allowed to be in a casino. And all these people that you bring up, they act like they go through me. I don't know these people. I have a team that brings casino players into the property.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just to recap what Mr. Sibella testified to. And another thing when you watch that whole video from episode 110, this guy's president and CEO of a major corporation, like I said, Resorts World Las Vegas. If you watch that video, you noticed how the lady next to him, which may be an attorney or something for Resorts World, keeps coaching him or tell him, like, this is what they're talking about, this is what you got to say, or something like that. And I thought that was a little bizarre because Mr. Sibella's testimony to me, he just didn't come across like a president and CEO of a corporation. That is strictly my opinion. Somebody else's opinion may differ. But these are the things that I picked out just because of my background in investigations. Now, let's go over some things that we just heard Mr. Sibella say. Like I said, the person he's referring to in this excerpt is Robert J. Cipriani, the gentleman I just discussed a minute or two ago. Remember, this is what Sibella said. These are his own words to the Gaming Control Board. He was in the casino without me knowing. That's his quote, okay? He was in the casino without me knowing, meaning Cipriani. And he says, quote, he's trying to attack and create things that aren't even true. That's his quote. That's Mr. Sibella's quote. And these things may be true, okay? But I'm going to tell you why I have problems with them. The other quote to the Gaming Control Board on March 2nd, Mr. Sibella told the Gaming Control Board, if you Google him, meaning Cipriani, there's a track record 3,000 pages deep of just what kind of person he is. So he's attacking now the character and credibility of Mr. Cipriani. And I'm going to discuss that here in a few minutes. And then he says, quote, all these people that you bring up, because the Gaming Control Board, for this hearing, they didn't mention names, but it was Cipriani, Brandon Sattler, and some other people. That's what they were discussing about all the stuff that was in the news that they're saying they're now investigating. And we know that they came out about a week ago, said they are investigating the charges made by Brandon Sattler in that deposition I talked about that conflicts with what Mr. Sibella testified to on March 2nd of 2022 in front of the Game Control Board. So, and then he says, there's the other thing. All these people that you bring up, they act like they go through me. I don't know these people. I have a team that brings casino players into the property. That's what you just heard Mrs. Sibella testify to the Gaming Control Board. Okay? And I'll tell you why I have some problems with that. Number one, I've obtained some documents, including emails, text messages, some of which I'm going to talk about in this podcast. So I got some questions, and we'll see if these questions are answered after I bring up what I'm going to talk about. First thing that came across to me in that, and with what I discovered since that, is why is the president and CEO of a major corporation who testified before the Nevada Gaming Control Board that he doesn't know Cipriani texting Mr. Cipriani after Mr. Cipriani was arrested at Resorts World, and why is Sibella commenting on the specifics? I'm going to get to that in a second. Another question. How is it that a gambler that Sibella said he doesn't know, Robert Cipriani, that's the person he's talking about, even though he didn't mention his name, how does Cipriani have the email address and cell phone number to Sibella, to the president and CEO of Resorts World? And why does Sibella refer to Mr. Cipriani in something I'm going to show you soon as, quote, his buddy, a buddy, okay? Seems a little odd to me that a casino player, that's the words Sibella used to the Gaming Control Board, to use Sibella's own words, would have such a personal connection with the president and CEO of Resorts World that Sibella said he doesn't know. He said, they're casino players. I have a team that brings them in, okay? The reason why I'm saying this, I'm bringing these questions up. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, I acquired some documents, emails and text messages, again, that seem to strongly conflict with what Resorts World President and CEO Scott Sibella testified to in front of the Nevada Gaming Control Board on March 2nd. You be the judge after this podcast. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about here, up on the screen, I'm going to put these things up on the screen just for a second, and then I'm going to read them so you can continue to see me. First one I'm putting up here is a email sent by Robert Cipriani to Scott Sibella on June 21st, which was last year. Okay. And there's more to that. I'm not going to take the banner off, but that is, you see that's the logo saying it's communicating through Resorts World. And you know what? Let me take the banner off here for a second. Otherwise, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to leave it up. Okay, let me put it back. So you got a gist of what I'm talking about. And let me get back up on the screen here. Okay. The document that was just up there. It's dated June 21st of 2021. It's from Mr. Cipriani. And he's sending this to Mr. Cipriani's email address at Resorts World. Hello, Scott. I hope you and your family are well. Just wanted to wish you congratulations on a job well done. You have a beautiful and one-of-a-kind resort and casino, and you had an amazing grand opening. I wish you all the best and continued success. RJ. Like I said, that was sent to Mr. Sibella's Resorts World email at, I'm not going to say what it is, but it's a Scott Sibella. It's a Resorts World address. They got different ways they send these emails. I don't want to put it out so the guy gets inundated with all kinds of crap. But anyway, that was sent on June 25th, 2021. On Saturday, June 26th of 2021, 2:27 p.m., Mr. Sibella replied to Robert Cipriani. Thanks, buddy. That's what he replied to. June 26th, 2021. Thanks, buddy. Okay. So this person that he pretty much said he doesn't know, he doesn't bring people in the casino, has his email address, says the property's looking good, congratulations. And he responds, thanks, buddy. Maybe it doesn't mean nothing, but to me, it does. Then the next thing in that the email I just had up on the screen is June 26th, 5:47 p.m., and it's to Scott Sibella from Robert Cipriani. And you go back and free shot that shot on the video because people say they like to see me talking for whatever freaking reason, so you see me reading this thing. So Robert Cipriani says on Saturday, June 26th at 5:47 p.m., hey, Scott, I would love to come in to play after July 4th weekend when everything calms down for you. Please let me know who I should reach out to at your property to book my stay. Excited to see the place. Thanks, RJ. And then, okay. Okay, let's make sure we got that over there. Okay, we got that one. Then we got next one I'm going to read, number 8. Be up on the screen here. Okay. You can see it. You can go back. Get me back up here. Okay. This is another email. It's from Robert Cipriani. And his handle, his nickname, people call him Robin Hood, 702 Robin Hood. That's R.J. Cipriani. It's Saturday, November 20th, 2021. And now remember, on the 19th, he was arrested at Resorts World property, like I said, because of the incident with convicted federal felon Robert Alexander in Resorts World. So this is Saturday, November 20th, 10:30 a.m. And Cipriani's sending this to a guy with the last name of Forbes, and I understand he's the head of security at Resorts World. Whether he's still there or not, I don't know. He says, Cipriani to Mr. Forbes, "Hello, hope you're well. I've been trying to reach you for days. It's R.J. Cipriani. Could you please call me at 310, his Cipriani's phone number. I want to formally ask you to please preserve all evidence, including but not limited to any and all footage of Robert Alexander at Resorts World." Again, that's the guy he took the phone away from because he said Alexander was snapping his pictures for a couple days and stalking him when he was in the casino. "Alexander has continued to film me, harass, intimidate, and threaten me for days leading up to the incident last night," which would have been the 19th of November, 2021. And then he continues on, Mr. Cipriani to Mr. Forbes. "He first started filming me months ago at High Limit as I was gambling, the High Limit area inside Resorts World. And why compliance has not barred Alexander months ago. Quote, know your customers, unquote. I look forward to your call, RJ." So he wants the head of security to preserve the surveillance footage, security surveillance footage, I guess when he had the incident with Robert Alexander. And I believe that happened. That's how the Nevada Current and other papers got a hold of the that photograph you saw earlier. So then what happens on the same day, Saturday, November 20th at 4:21 p.m., Scott Sibella, the president and CEO of Resorts World, who claims he doesn't know Cipriani, I have people that get these people in the casino. He now responds to Mr. Cipriani because earlier, Mr. Cipriani forwarded the email that I just read that he sent to Mr. Forbes. He also forwarded it to Scott Sibella at Scott Sibella's email address at Resorts World. And on Saturday, November 20th, 2021, at 4:21 p.m., Scott Sibella replies to Mr. Cipriani in an email, and Mr. Sibella says, RJ. Now I'm reading exactly how he said it because some of the pronunciation is bad, but this is exactly what's in the email. RJ, I look into when I get back and will make sure video is kept. Per our compliance regs with corp, which means corporate, any that gets arrested on property is trespassed. Also being told by my casino team that we have issues with you on games, pass betting, etc. And then it says it was sent from Mr. Sibella's cell phone. Okay? So, you just heard when Mrs. Sibella responded. I have to ask the question right now. For a guy that's, according to Mrs. Sibella, they're just gamblers, I don't bring them in, my team brings them in, and they said, I don't know these people you're talking about to the commission. Cipriani was one of those people that the commission was asking him about, even though they didn't mention names. For somebody that doesn't know Cipriani, he's awful friendly because Cipriani's got his email and he's now the president. What I got a problem with is this, okay? I was in the casino business. I was in security and surveillance investigations. But now you have the president of Resorts World Las Vegas responding to a customer, Mr. Cipriani, who was arrested on his property. And he's telling him, I'm going to look into it, get back with you, and I will make sure the video is kept. Why is the president and CEO talking to Mr. Cipriani about a criminal case that, according to Mr. Sibella, and I hope I'm not, sometimes I'm confusing these names, Sibella and Cipriani. Sibella is the president and CEO of Resorts World. Mr. Cipriani is the gambler. Why is Mr. Sibella, the president and CEO of Resorts World, telling Mr. Cipriani, oh yeah, I'll check into it and I'll make sure the video is kept? I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I worked in the casino industry for years. Like I said, I was an investigator, director of security, surveillance, 2 properties. When somebody's arrested on a property, a lot of times they call up and they want to complain. They want to ask questions. The person, at least when I was there at the Riviera, would be transferred over to me, the director of security. That's who would answer. It would never go to the president and CEO of the company, okay? It would never get up to that level. But over here, Mr. Cipriani doesn't know this guy, but obviously he knows him well enough to respond back to him about an incident on his property. Next thing, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see some text messages coming up. Give a little background on them. And these are text messages dated November 22nd, 2021. These are, we just read the email from the day before, okay? These are text messages between Mr. Sibella and Mr. Cipriani, okay? So the plot's thickening here. Obviously, Mr. Cipriani knows Mr. Sibella very well, regardless of what Mr. Sibella tried to give the impression to the Gaming Control Board, in my opinion, on March 2nd of this year, as you heard him when he was testifying. So let me get these things up on the screen for a minute or two, for a couple of seconds, and then I'll take them off so you can go back and look at them. Okay, it's going to run here. I'll let it run through 2 cycles, and then I'm going to leave them up, and I'm just going to read them, okay? And there's some doubles because the way the text message cuts off goes to the next page. Monday, November 22nd, 2021. Good morning. This is Mrs. Cipriani to Mr. Sibella. Good morning. Waiting to hear from you. Multiple press outlets have called me regarding the incident and are asking me for a response. I have not responded. I need your guidance of what to do. I don't want to hurt Resorts World or me in any way. And you can see from the bottom, it looks like that was sent out 9:30 in the morning on November 22nd, 2021. Now, Mr. Sibella responds. This is a text message coming from Mr. Sibella's cell phone. RJ, as I mentioned in email, remember, I just said the email from the day before, from the 20th or 21st when it was, now the 22nd. So now he's referring back to the email he sent RJ Cipriani that I just read from 2 days ago. RJ, as I mentioned in email, anyone who gets arrested at Resorts World is trespassed. Also, I'm being told that there are issues your casino play, attempts to pass post, disputes, etc. I'm meeting with compliance to review. And you can see on the screen, the time was 11:08 a.m. on November 22nd when Mr. Sibella responded back to Mr. Cipriani. So, ladies and gentlemen, the plot's thickening here. Does this sound like a president and CEO of a corporation, a company, in this instance, a casino, a gaming company, who doesn't know that person? Obviously, to me, there's a relationship with Mr. Cipriani and Mr. Sibella for some time. That's my opinion, okay? But it gets even better, ladies and gentlemen. This is a text message. Remember, that was the 22nd we just read, the text messages, and the emails between Sibella and Cipriani from November 20th. You can go back on the screen, review them after you look at the podcast. But now, Mrs. Cipriani is a little upset. So this is a text message again, but now it's November 23rd. I think it's 6:08 p.m. if my documents are right here. 6:08 p.m. Yeah, that looks about right. Now we're at November 23rd. So I'm going to put this up on the screen. First, I'll leave it on the screen while I'm talking. You don't need to see me. Okay? And basically, it's part of the thing on the way the other half went. But basically, get the gist of this. Mr. Cipriani's upset. He says, 4 days after I'm arrested at your casino on a bullshit charge, and still, no call from you, no apology from you. Get me back up on the screen here. Okay? I'm going to read that again. This is Mr. Cipriani, November 23rd, 6:08 p.m., texting President and CEO Scott Sibella of Resorts World. 4 days after I'm arrested at your casino on a bullshit charge, and still, no call from you, no apology from you. Your staff threw my wife out on the street after the incident, no apology to her from you either. No taking responsibility for what happened to me, being put in jail and charged with a felony because of your inept security team and inept casino operations team, and you letting guys like Alexander, Sattler, and Ting and other criminals come to Resorts World to play and party. Forbes, remember that's the guy I believe is the head of security, could have never made that call to bring in Metro and have me arrested without you giving the green light. You could have prevented all of this. You did nothing. That's not how you treat a friend that gave you a pass 2.5 years ago, and then in parentheses he puts, from all the dirty shit you did at MGM and beyond, close parentheses, just so you could become president of Resorts World and make a ton of side cash with every vendor in the joint and take care of all your friends, including Chesnoff. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, remember from earlier in the other podcast, David Chesnoff, from what I'm told from sources, is a close friend of Scott Sibella, and we talked about his possible association with another vendor, 8 Cigar Lounge, inside Resorts World, and you go back and look at the other podcast, and then we have the news articles that I talked about. I believe it was from Nevada Current, where she posted some documents that Mr. Chesnoff was an associate and was some type of investor in Robert Alexander's business, and then Alexander gets popped by the feds for fraud, and he's facing like 20, 25 years. He was sentenced. He just hasn't gone to prison yet. So anyway, that's from Mr. Cipriani. He's obviously upset about what happened to him getting arrested on the 19th. Now, is anything in there true? I don't know. I don't know who called the police on Mr. Cipriani. Was it the security? Was it Mr. Alexander? But he's saying he's blaming security and blaming Resorts World for him getting arrested. But other newspapers have reported that when he says guys like Alexander, Sattler, and Ting, you're allowing the casino, there's other articles out there, like I said, and we talked about Mr. Sattler in the other podcast. We talked about Robert Alexander. Sattler is a convicted federal felon for bank fraud, aiding and abetting. Alexander is a convicted federal felon for fraud and maybe some other charges. And I believe Andrew Ting, I think that's his first name, is a convicted federal felon for fraud, and I believe maybe money laundering and other stuff. So that's when he's referring to these people there. That's what he's referring to. And remember, newspaper articles have reported that while he was gambling Mrs. Cipriani at Resorts World, he had told them about these people that you shouldn't have them in the casino because of their backgrounds and stuff. So that gives you a little background what's going on. So what happens after that? Remember, that was sent out to Mr. Sibella by Mr. Cipriani on November 23rd, 6:08 p.m., just so we get the times correct. And what happens is November 23rd at 6:26 p.m., Scott Sibella, according to these text messages that I have, responds back to Mr. Cipriani. I'll put that up on the screen so you can see it. Okay. Please don't F threaten me. It's got the letter F. There is no history on me. You can say anything you want. It's all BS. I'm clean as a whistle. I only got with Chesnoff because I thought it would ruin my reputation, but realized you have no influence, so go for it. I knew this was coming and don't care. Good luck. By the way, I'm the reason why you were allowed in Resorts World and was trying to help you, but was told to stay out of it from corporate, so I did. Alexander called the cops, not us. I guess we're done. I was hoping you wouldn't pull your trump card threat, and you did, so best of luck, and don't ever threaten me again. I'm bigger than you. Please don't respond. I'm going to take this banner off because I know there's people, news people, going to call me up and say, you want to see this, so I'm going to take it off for a second, okay? So that's what he said at the end. I'm bigger than you. Please don't respond. Okay, let me get back up on the screen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, okay, what's interesting about this? You probably already picked it out because some of you people send me these emails and you're like, you're on the ball. Okay? What did he say? Forget about that he's bigger than Mr. Cipriani and he's got no influence. Well, he's under investigation, Mrs. Sibella, by the Nevada Gaming Control Board. And maybe we'll see if he's bigger than the Nevada Gaming Control Board. Time will tell on that. Because like I said to somebody the other day, the Nevada Gaming Control Board is a political organization. Even though they have a law enforcement branch, the enforcement division, but there's a lot of politics, and I can do another podcast about that. But let's see. He's telling Mrs. Cipriani, I'm bigger than you, meaning, I guess, I'm the president, I got influence, I got power. So let's just see what's going to happen with the Gaming Control Board investigation. Let's see if Mrs. Sibella is going to actually be bigger than the Gaming Control Board, because he thinks he's bigger than Mrs. Cipriani. But ladies and gentlemen, what did I read in this? Okay? Read it again. You go back and look at the video. By the way, this is the president and CEO of Resorts World on November 21st sending this text to Mr. Cipriani. You just read it. You just saw it on screen. By the way, I'm the reason why you were allowed in Resorts World and was trying to help you. But ladies and gentlemen, this text message here, which the Gaming Control Board can get, they could subpoena all these records and stuff from the cell phone and stuff like that, right? That contradicts to what you heard Mr. Sibella say at the beginning of this podcast to the Gaming Control Board. That basically he didn't know Cipriani. He doesn't bring people into the casino. He has a team that does it. This is a major confliction with his testimony. So take it for what it's worth, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of stuff here that's extremely, extremely troublesome to me. Remember, a lot of people see my podcast and they get all bent out of shape. You say this and who do you know? And I told you that the other day. Okay, I spend most of my life either in the law enforcement or the private sector conducting investigations. Some big investigations that I'll talk about that I did for casinos that'll knock your socks off. So when I see these things, contradictions, documents that conflict with verbal testimony, it's extremely troublesome. Mr. Sibella has an issue, has a problem, I believe. If the Nevada Gaming Control Board is not going to play politics, because Resorts World is a major corporation, a major casino in Las Vegas, there's some major problems going on here that I brought out at these podcasts. So you just heard what I said. But I want to bring something up. Remember, and we're gonna shut this down here because my voice is going again. We're at 38 minutes. Remember when Mr. Sibella was testifying at the Gaming Control Board, and let me see if I have his thing here. It's in here somewhere. Here it is. Okay. Remember what he said about, and I'll explain why I'm doing this. Okay. He said to the Gaming Control Board, Mr. Sibella, about Mr. Cipriani, quote, if you Google him, there's a track record of 3,000 pages deep of just what kind of person he is. Yes, there's a lot of stuff on the internet about Robert Cipriani. A lot of it has to do with his cooperation, working with the FBI on some major, major cases. And I'm not going to get into them because there are major cases, and he put some bad people in prison. Mrs. Cipriani did. And that's been published in numerous articles. If you put his name in, you'll see that. And but how do we know that? Okay? That could be just a bunch of BS. Mrs. Cipriani talks to a reporter and says, I was part of this big investigation, I put all this, and it led to so many arrests, and one case after the other. That could be BS, right? Well, no, because back in January 5th of 2016, when one of these major cases that Cipriani assisted the feds with, the FBI, was still ongoing, I guess word was getting out that basically Mrs. Cipriani was involved in some way in this criminal activity and this ring that came out, and he was having problems. People saying, well, you were part of it. And from what I'm going to read you here, it's farthest from the truth. Now, this is an email sent to Mr. Cipriani from Brett Fenoglio, Fenoglio. Who the hell is Brett Fenoglio? When this was written, Mrs. Fenoglio, Special Agent Brett Fenoglio, was an FBI agent out of the San Diego division, okay? And Mrs. Cipriani wanted like a letter of recommendation. Somebody say, listen, I'm not a bad guy. I help you guys. So I want you to listen to this. I'm going to put this up on the screen because this needs to get out, only because Mrs. Sibella, trashed Mr. Cipriani's reputation. And, and got both sides here. I don't play favorites. It's got to be both sides. You got to get the stuff out, let people think what they want. And just so you know, a lot of people outside of Las Vegas, when they hear that somebody's a gambler, right away they think you're a criminal, you're a dirtbag, you're a lowlife. But because the gaming industry all over the world now, not like back in the 50s and the 40s, okay? Major corporations all over the world own casinos and gambling establishments. Excuse me, my voice is going, okay? And they're legitimate companies. They're not run by the mob. They're corporations, just like everything going on in Las Vegas, Resorts World. So, when somebody says, well, he's a gambler, he's got to be a dirtbag. There are people like Mrs. Cipriani and other gamblers who are very good, and I was in the casino business for years, very good at gambling. They're smart, they keep track of numbers, they know how to play. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that whole thing. Again, this is coming on the screen, ladies and gentlemen. It's from Special Agent Brett Fenoglio out of the FBI San Diego office, and I'm going to read it for my audio people, audio podcast people that can't see this stuff. And that's why people say, why do you talk? Because the audio podcast people do not know what I'm putting up on the screen. So let me get this up here. Okay, I'm going to leave it up while I'm reading it. FBI Agent Fenoglio, when I first spoke to Robert about what he had been through, my initial response was one of cautious skepticism. In my line of work, I had fielded many calls over the years from people claiming to have suffered extraordinary wrongs at the hands of others. But often these claims were full of holes, inconsistencies, or factual inaccuracies. The more I listened to Robert's story and checked his claims against facts which I already knew based on my independent investigation, the more I realized he was telling me the truth. Robert had been turned away by several folks in the past. Let me back up on the screen here. Robert had been turned away by several folks in the past because his claims seemed to be too outlandish to be real. Well, they were real. I'm glad I took the time to listen to him. Over the years, Robert provided valuable information to me on multiple investigations and was able to provide assistance to numerous other investigations worked out of different offices. It's talking about FBI offices, FBI investigations. There are few people I've worked with through the years who are as passionate as Robert about seeing that justice is done and seeing that wrongs are made right. The world would be a much finer place if there were more people like Robert in it. Ladies and gentlemen, this email I just read, it's up on the screen. That came from FBI agent Brett Fenoglio, dated January 5th, 2016, 2:55 p.m., to Mr. Cipriani. And that is one hell of a recommendation from an FBI agent. I'm telling you, I worked as a criminal investigator when I was a cop. I worked many years undercover. I worked with federal agencies, the ATF, the FBI, DEA, Customs, you name it, Secret Service, and plus a bunch of state agencies. I was on a state police task force. And This FBI agent is saying that Mr. Cipriani provided valuable information to them, and they made cases based off of what he said. And you read it. You can go back and look at the screen. That is freaking amazing to me as an ex-cop. Okay, but ladies and gentlemen, it gets even better because, like I said, that email that Agent Finoglio sent to Mr. Cipriani, giving him this recommendation, January 5th of 2016. That's when he sent that, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to put that up on the screen here in a minute. Got a hold of this document. This is dated January 16, 2018, 2 years about after the FBI. This is from Andrew P. Young, Assistant United States Attorney, Major Frauds and Public Corruption, U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of California. I'm going to put this up on the screen. Okay, now I'm going to read it. To whom it may concern, I am the lead prosecutor in the criminal prosecution of United States versus Owen Hansen et al., case number blah, blah, blah. On December 15, 2017, a federal court in the Southern District of California sentenced Owen Hansen to serve 21 years in prison for his role leading an illegal gambling and drug trafficking organization in violation of federal racketeering laws. Part of the criminal conviction stemmed from a widely reported incident that occurred in Sydney, Australia, at the Star Casino in approximately August 2011, involving Owen Hansen and Robert Cipriani, also known as Robin Hood 702. For several years after the August 2011 incident, Mr. Hansen threatened Mr. Cipriani and his family. During the sentencing, Mrs. Cipriani spoke at length about the effect Hansen's threats had on him and his family. The government and the court permitted him, Cipriani, to speak at Hansen's sentencing because it considered him, Cipriani, a victim of a federal crime, as defined by Title 18, United States Code 3771E2A. At no point during the prosecution of this case did the government regard Mr. Cipriani as a target of the investigation. If you have any questions, please contact me over at the telephone number. Signed, Andrew P. Young, Assistant United States Attorney, Major Frauds and Public Corruption, United States Attorney's Office for the District of California. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think that covers just about everything. I did hear that last week or so, that Resorts World, when I talked about the charges against David Stroge for the federal charges of running the illegal gambling business back in 2015, and all those 20-something people got arrested, some of them were playing at Resorts World, okay? And I heard that last week, somewhere around last week, maybe the week before, Resorts World is going down the list, and they already trespassed two people that were on that list that were co-defendants of Mrs. Stroge, I heard. So anyway, that's what's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, you make your own determination on this. If it helps investigators or regulatory agents, that's out of my control. I'm putting this stuff out. I got a hold of these documents and text messages, and I got more. But I got them out there. So we get both sides on this, and this is a big mess. And like I said, based on the other podcast, what Mr. Sattler, the other gambler, said about Mr. Sibella, the president, that he lied to the Gaming Control Board, and appears from what I did today in this podcast that, to be politically correct, it strongly conflicts with what Mr. Sibella testified to in front of the Gaming Control Board on March 2nd of this year when he was talking. They didn't mention his name, but he's talking about Mr. Cipriani. That's who they were talking about. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is what it is. It's Sunday night, 23:08 hours. It's 8 minutes after 11 o'clock from the desert of Las Vegas. We're listening and watching the Truth and Consequences podcast with Doug Poppa, independent investigative journalism. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my YouTube channel by hitting the red subscribe button. My PayPal account, if you want to donate some money. I know times are tough, people can't do it, but people always ask me sometimes, I want to put a couple bucks in. It's paypal.me/Doug Poppa. And audio podcast, big ones out there, they're on a bunch of stuff, but Spotify and iHeartRadio, if you want to listen to the audio podcast. Some people like listening to audio podcasts when they're driving in cars or something, so that's where the iHeartRadio podcast and Spotify audio podcast under Truth and Consequences with Doug Poppa. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you listening to these podcasts and my work, because like I said, I'm an independent journalist, and I basically, my team is 3 people here, okay? Me and myself and I. And when I do some of these stories and I get information and documents and I have police sources, I consider those people part of my team, even though I can't name them because, they're sources, okay? They can lose their job and stuff like that. I consider them part of my team because without the information, ladies and gentlemen, no investigator, whether you're an investigative journalist or an investigator for a law enforcement agency, whether federal, state, and local, if you do not have sources of information, you are useless. The only thing you can do, especially in the news business, if you don't have sources, is to report what somebody says, and you're a reporter. Sheriff Lombardo said this, and then they mimic him. Sheriff Lombardo said this, and that's a reporter. But if you want to be an investigative journalist or any type of investigator in police work and law enforcement, it's crucial that you develop sources of information. It is crucial because without the sources of information, like I said, an investigator or detective is useless. Not only if you're working undercover like I did years ago when I was on the force with informants and stuff, but in any criminal case, you need sources of information. You need to develop them, and you need to talk to people and get information from them to make your case. That's what it's all about. So I just want to say that. Anyway, I appreciate it. Stay tuned. I got a lot more stuff coming out. Like I said, we got the 5-year anniversary. I hate using that word anniversary because I think it's disgusting. 5 years, October, the Las Vegas Massacre. More stuff coming out. The unsolved murders of Sidney Land and Nehemiah Kaufman. A lot of stuff going on with that. I'll be talking about that. 6 years since those murders happened, they're still unsolved. Allegations of police corruption, misconduct, negligence, the gamut out here from the Las Vegas Metro Police Homicide Bureau. Okay, and then more stuff coming out on the police department because I sources, and I just got some more stuff over this past weekend, and I'll be doing that this week. All these people that give me this information is because they want to get it out. And as an independent, as any journalist, I say independent because I don't work for anybody. I work for myself. Nobody tells me what to do. But as an investigative journalist, your job is to get it out to the community so the community knows what's going on, especially when it involves corruption, misconduct, cover-ups in the police department like goes on here at Las Vegas Metro. That's what it's all about. Real short, I want to say something. Not every cop on the Las Vegas Metro Police is bad, does misconduct, but I report on the bad stuff that I get because most cops do their job and go home and they do good, okay? That's what they're supposed to do. I was a cop, okay? You're supposed to do good. You're supposed to do your job, okay? It's when you have the cops who are either corrupt or they do misconduct or they violate their oath of office. That's what I report. It's not every cop on this police department or in every police department in the country, because it'd be a pretty sad state of affairs. It's that the way, if that's really what it was, and it's not like that. We need police. Police are going to be around long after I'm dead for one simple reason, okay? There's always going to be bad guys, always, as long as we have the human race. There's going to be criminals, and we need police and law enforcement to go after the criminals, investigate them, and lock them up. But do it honorably. You don't lie in police reports. You don't lie under oath. You don't lie in search warrants. You don't lie in affidavits, okay? And the cops that do, they need to throw them the hell out of these police agencies, because they are a disgrace to every cop, every good cop that pins his badge on every morning. And I'm going to get more on these podcasts when I start getting into this stuff, because this is stuff that really, really concerns me, because I lost my job, okay? Could never be a cop again in this country, because all I did was get on the stand and testify that exculpatory evidence was withheld by the sheriff's office and the prosecutor's office back in 1980, 87, 86, when it's, anyway, I've talked about them, talk about it again. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, it's 56 minutes, and appreciate the support, and we're getting up in subscribers. I think we're at 500 or over 500. Appreciate it. Just subscribe to me. If that's all you can do is hit the red subscribe button. Ladies and gentlemen, you all have a good night, and thank you.